When I look at data, there are 4 pluses I see in data. The first is, using the terminology of data analysts, is you're looking for signal in the noise. And God, is there a lot of noise around us? What am I talking about? When you sit down to price or value a stock or do corporate financial analysis, you have to make estimates. To make those estimates, you have to look at what's out there in terms of viewpoints and numbers. And guess what? Those numbers don't always point in the same direction. In fact, they often contradict each other. And you're trying to say, hey, how do I make sense of this contradictory data? So when we talk about finding signals in the noise, we're talking about looking at that data, pulling in different directions and trying to make sense of the data and coming up with a direction that makes sense for you. Signal in the noise. Second, it is undeniable that we live in a world of uncertainty, and perhaps more uncertainty than we've faced in recent decades, because the global economic order that was put together after the Second World War is starting to break down. In the face of uncertainty, as human beings, we often react in fairly unhealthy ways. Denial is common, we get paralyzed. I found the data gives you 2 benefits when it comes to uncertainty. One is by letting you look at uncertainty in terms of range of possible outcomes, you start to think about what to do about that uncertainty. Second, there are tools that you can bring in from data, simulations, visualizations that allow you to confront uncertainty, incorporate into your decision making. So signal in the noise, coping mechanism for uncertainty. Third, there's tunnel vision that comes whenever you sit down to do analysis. It's easy to get bogged down in details that don't matter. In fact, in the midst of analysis, it's difficult to figure out what matters from what doesn't. Everything starts to look important and you lose perspective. I've discovered that stepping back and using data to gain perspective, especially data across time, data across companies, is one way of regaining that perspective. And finally, we live in a world with a lot more data, but there's also a lot of misinformation, bad data out there. Now, and I would love to blame social media entirely for this, that it's on Facebook and X, but let's face it, it's all over the place. I see it on CNBC, I see it in the Wall Street Journal, people making up stuff and calling it a fact. I've discovered that the best pushback when you listen to these fabulous people who make up stuff is to go to the data. So one of the reasons I go to the data is I need to know what's going on, and I'm not getting it by listening to other people. So the good side of data is signal in the noise. It provides a coping mechanism for uncertainty. It's a prescription for tunnel vision, and it's a shield against disinformation. But there is a bad side.